And let's dive in. Look, I understand a bit of the reaction to the Brian Kelly news, in that it was a bit of like, I think I even tweeted at first, this is a solid hire. Not the sexiest, but a solid hire. That feels at odds with the excitement in my voice right now, as you can probably tell. And that's because I started to dive deep. But if I want to try to explain, Jake, I was trying to go back and I'm trying to think, okay, why was it a little whelming at first? Almost even underwhelming. Like, how do you hire a guy who is, I've read that he's like the active winningest coach, second active, most active winning coach, or the third. He's top three. I don't know exactly what qualifiers people are used, but he's definitely top three. How do you hire a top three winningest coach in all of college football and it feels a bit underwhelming, right? That's the question I try to explore. And it's like, okay, maybe it's the age factor, right? He is 60 years old that he's taking the job. Maybe it's the fact that he comes from Notre Dame. Maybe it's the fact that he's not like a sexy young coordinator mind, right? Maybe it's the fact that he does kind of give off the vibe of a Diet Coke in a lot of ways. Maybe, you know what? I think this is probably an element of it too. I've had to take back a lot of Brian Kelly jokes that I've made through the years. I've made a lot of Brian Kelly jokes. I've made a lot of Notre Dame jokes.
I've made a lot of Notre Dame jokes.
That's what I'm saying.
Ain't no doubt about that.
Yeah, okay? So maybe it's all of these things. Maybe it's, but the point is, Jake, everything I just said, that's just opinion. Like, all of those are just opinions. And the opinions are completely at odds with the facts. And I can't help but I just hear the cannon yelling in my ear, you have to be objective. He used to, all the time, just yell, you have to be objective. And when you take a step back and you look at this hire, at the resume, you look at the results, and you realize if you are going to argue against Brian Kelly, you are going to have to do some damned heavy lifting, Jake, because the simple objective fact of the matter is this is the most accomplished hire that LSU has ever made, and it's not even close. Like that, again, that's not opinion. That is hard data-backed fact.
Them's the facts.
It is by far the most accomplished hire that LSU's ever made.
Yeah, without question. I mean, we talked about it yesterday when Coach Saban came from Michigan State. Obviously wasn't this. When Les came from Oklahoma State, I think he had less than 50 games, right at 50 games as a head coach. Coach O obviously had only been a head coach at Ole Miss. We all know how that turned out. I mean, that's just the last three. And again, not to beat a dead horse, those last three, you know what they did. They won a natty. So for someone coming, even if you just took his resume with the vacated wins off, okay, in a year where he made a national championship game in one of those years, 92-39. That's his Notre Dame career if you took off some of the victories. 34-6, by the way, at Cincinnati, Central Michigan, and Grand Valley State. He's got a resume, right? But even if you just took what he did recently at Notre Dame since 2017, 10-3, 12-1, 11-2, 10-2, 11-1 this year.
The exact same.
It's still going. This isn't someone that in 2014 had a hell of a year, and they've been 8-5, 7-6 since.
Yep.
The last 5 years, including this year, where they have a very real opportunity to make a playoff.
And that's
it's not that crazy.
We'll circle
things
back
like that
around
aren't crazy. There's some things that have to happen, and it's not a lot of them.
ESPN gives them a 58% chance of making a playoff.
So better to make it than not to make it.
Yes.
And
that man's he knows the score. He knows the score. He's like, I'm not doing this dance again. I know what the ceiling is here. I gotta go. I gotta go chase my dreams. And it's funny, Jake, because for all the reasons you just laid out in the resume and everything, all the pieces are starting to fall into place, aren't they now? Like, you now see why Kiffin and Napier were largely ignored. Because you had your sights on more established game. This is the big game hunter at work.
A lot of people throwing out the resume against SEC teams and top teams, and I understand that. Don't forget Lincoln Riley, when he played the SEC in the 3 games, he gave up an average. This is an average of 54 points. That's an average of 54 points in those games, okay? So you look at that if you want to, and then look at what Brian Kelly, and think about the recruiting things that Notre Dame has to go through.
Yeah.
Think about the standards to get into Notre Dame. Like, we all know people that have applied to Notre Dame, and it's very difficult to get in. The weather, South Bend, Indiana, everything. Just everything that comes with horrible.
I remember going, I just spent a week there.
My brother-in-law lived there for 2 years. He hated every second of it.
And so it kind of makes you stop and think, right? It's like, it explains why Kevin and Napier were ignored. It's tough for me to ever see that the Riley stuff was real, or that the Jimbo stuff even got that far, because you don't get a coach like Kelly if he thinks he's second fiddle. It's just not how it works. I'll be fascinated to see what the reporting comes out on how real the Riley stuff actually was, because I think there's an incredible misinformation campaign, and I have a lot of ideas on how that could come about. But again, I don't know anything for sure. Still, the Brian Kelly thing was so crazy to me, Jake, because it was just a non-starter. Like, again, why would he leave Notre Dame, where he had just passed Newt Rockne to become the winningest coach in school history? Why would he leave Notre Dame and how solid he was in his current situation to join the SEC West, the country's premier pressure cooker? The man had everything in place at Notre Dame. He had just replaced his winningest quarterback in school history, 4 starting O-linemen, one of the top linebackers in the nation, his defensive coordinator, and he still went 11-1. Why leave? Why indeed? And that, my friends, is the crux of the argument. And that, my friends, is why the age argument holds no sway with me. Okay? It's not just the impeccable resume, the fact they have a top 5 recruiting class right now, blah, blah, blah. No, it's the fact that this man chose of his own volition to leave that cush job and hop into the bloodbath madness of the SEC West and the unreal expectations of the LSU job. That is someone, Jake, to steal from Les here, with the chest to lead this program. Let's just compare it to Lincoln. Oh, you didn't tell me we were joining the SEC. I'm going to Los Angeles. Good. You little 38-year-old weakling. At a time when the wunderkind is running away, we got the old salty general, the old 60-year-old vet coming down here to do battle. That is not someone who has lost motivation, okay? That is not someone who is afraid. That is someone who is on the warpath and has a singular goal in mind, Jake. This is exactly what you were just talking about. His goal is to win a natty. This man's school he's at right now has a 58% chance of making the playoff, and he's leaving. Yeah. Why? Because he knows the ceiling. He's done that dance before. He's leaving because exactly what Jake said. He knows what these last coaches did here, and he knows what we've been saying this entire time. He recognizes the power of LSU. If that doesn't get you excited, what?
Hey, not to mention he's 2 for 2 in his last 2 against LSU.
Yeah. I mean, I don't love that, but yes.
Look, he is going, and I said it this morning, he is going to go to like Carr versus St. Aug. He's going to go to Rummel versus Catholic, and he's going to be like, are you kidding me? I get to choose from this game. I get to choose recruits. It's that easy that I can pull up, and this is what I have to choose from. They've got a number 4 recruiting class in the country at Notre Dame right now.
Yeah.
At Notre Dame they do. You don't think that he's going to be able to accelerate what he does in recruiting when it comes to Louisiana? When he gets first choice of every player in this state? We saw what Walker Howard said, and I know Walker Howard's number 2 was Notre Dame. Well, that was for a reason.
Yeah.
That was for a reason. As soon as that reason left, he was all good. Yeah. He talked about winning championships.
Yeah, so the direct quote, hold on, I have it on a tweet here. So Cokie Riley did a great job reporting, writes for the Advertiser. He got a direct quote from Walker, and it's, quote, he's going to bring us national championships. Talking about Brian Kelly. So again, he's not running away from the expectation. No. Brian Kelly actively wants that smoke. At a time, I cannot reinforce this enough. At a time when we literally saw Lincoln Riley just run away from the SEC for we called it yesterday, the smarter path. I get it. It is a smarter and easier path to success than Oklahoma joining here. And that's the other thing. Lincoln has Oklahoma rolling, and they were going to join the SEC, right? So he could have stayed there and been fine. Brian Kelly just chose to join the team that finished dead last in the SEC West.
Yeah.
In a half conference where literally every single team is bowl eligible. I mean, in a half conference that features Lane Kiffin, Mike Leach, Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban. Are you kidding me? Again, that is someone with the chest. That's what we kept talking about. You don't want someone who is scared of all of this stuff, the pressure cooker, the expectations. This is someone who wants it. And Jake, the other part, and this thing something that's being pointed out a ton, and rightfully so, is that he is process oriented. He is there's a consistency there that has been missing in the last two regimes, right? The Les Miles era was full of an up and down sort of nature, not necessarily wins and losses wise all the time, though there's certainly some of that, but that's just kind of football. But because Miles was pretty consistent overall, like in terms of wins and losses. But in terms of like some of just the kind of careless in-game mistakes and like how the program was viewed one year to the next, and then there was the stagnation, and then obviously the Orgeron era was incredibly volatile, with the highest of highs and then some of the lowest lows that LSU's experienced in a while. There is a stability and a consistency to Kelly and his resume that I think also checks like literally every box that Scott Woodward wanted to check with this hire.
Without question, because you've got a couple of ways that you go. Like normally you've got an opportunity to either get like the young up-and-coming guy who was an assistant, has a group of 5 job and did really well there for a year, maybe 2 years, and he's hot on the block, right? Everybody wants to take a shot at him. You got that. You've got the coaches that are at the halfway house in Tuscaloosa, the guys that had been somewhere, whatever happened, then they go to the halfway house with Coach Saban, try to resurrect their career, and then you go hire one of those guys, right? We've seen it all happen before. How many times do guys get hired out of that? Or the option that doesn't seem like you have the opportunity to do so, you go get a guy with Brian Kelly's resume, a guy that has done it at the highest level. I realize he doesn't have a national championship. I can see just like you can. But I also see how many college football playoffs, how many BCS games he has been in, right? And you see what he has done to stabilize a program that at times can be very hard to stabilize. You can have success at Notre Dame, but to do it for as long as he did, that's one of the more impressive things.
Here's another one. Notre Dame football's last 5 years. 10-1, 10-2, 11-2, 12-1, 10-3. So 5 double-digit wins in 5 years. They had 4 double-digit win seasons in the previous 23 years. He took over a 4-8 Notre Dame team when he showed up in South Bend. Again, the numbers, if you're going to argue against him, the numbers just are not in your favor. And Jake, you said, yes, you realize he doesn't have a national championship. You know who realized that more than anybody? Brian Kelly. Why do you think he's coming here? Again, he recognizes everything that we bandied up LSU. Like, we put LSU on this pedestal during this coaching search. And we said it's a top 5 job in the country because of the natural resources, the soil, the geography, all of these things. And when Lincoln left for USC, a lot of that ego took a hit. A lot of that confidence, a lot of that belief. Well, is that really true? And, and I'm kind of hand-waving away. Well, like, yeah, but I mean, it's, in the context, I can understand that maybe USC has a better job than LSU. Brian Kelly said, F that. I'm trying to get that natty. I'm 60 years old, which, by the way, Saban arrived at Alabama at 57. Shout out Nick Diaz, former OTB intern and 1045 intern, for giving me that little nugget on Twitter. So that's not, and go check him out on YouTube. But that's also not, so that's not really, it's not, the aging is a non-starter for multiple reasons. But again, Saban got to Alabama at 57. He's only 60. But that is a man who is getting older and who very objectively realizes that he wants the final trophy in his cabinet.
Yeah.
And that this is, again, Notre Dame. I was bought into the idea that why would a coach leave a team that will make the playoff to maybe make a playoff, right? He has a 60% chance of making the playoff according to ESPN right now, and he said, nah, I don't care. I've done this dance. Yeah. I know what our ceiling is. I am trying to do something I've never done before, and he's stepping into a snake pit to get it done.
Yeah, with like some built-in advantages that we've talked about many, many times to try to get into that CFP, right? Because you're not in a conference, because you can kind of dictate how your schedule goes and where you play some of these games and all of those things. So he's betting on himself. I mean, he is betting on himself wholeheartedly coming down to LSU. I mean, you've laid it out. You've laid out the coaches. We know what the expectation level is. I mean, we don't have to talk about that. Y'all know it. We know it. Everybody knows it. We know what the expectation is at LSU and how much you have to win. And you have to do it in a very quick period of time. You don't get mulligans. You don't get building blocks. You don't get years where you just were getting it figured out. You got to get it figured out, and as soon as that plane lands today, it's got to be figured out. That's just the nature of the job.
Yep.
But he's okay with it, and that's what I like about it. Like, if you would have got somebody, T-Bob, that was at a place that was successful before, but they've had 3 years of 9 or less wins, it's a completely different conversation than today is.
Yep.
That is not the case you're in. You're in the case where his team has a likelihood. I'll call it if it's 60%, that's a likelihood to me.
Yeah.
Of making
a coin flip.
the CFP.
Let's just call it a coin flip. We'll just be fair.
Yeah.
We'll just call it a coin flip chance. Anybody would take those odds.
And he's
But not
coming
Brian Kelly?
here.
Yeah. Because he said, no. Look, I'm out. I don't care. I don't care. I mean, it's funny. He's basically telling you without telling you, if we make the playoff, I know we're going to get waxed. We're not on the levels of your Georgias right now. And make no mistake, we haven't even talked about that. Yes, he's stepping in the West, but he's also stepping up against Kirby Smart in Georgia. Right? It's not just the West. It's the SEC as a whole. He's stepping in when a time when Texas and Oklahoma are about to join. This man is not old. He is not looking to retire quietly into the night. If he was, he would have just stayed at Notre Dame. This is a man on the warpath with singular and very focused motivation, and that is to lift a national championship trophy. And, oh, my blood is pumping right now. But what about Lincoln Riley? I'll go to Maester Hannegriff with exhibit number 1. Over the last 5 seasons, Lincoln Riley was 55-10 with 3 playoff appearances. Pretty damn good. Brian Kelly, 54-9 with 2 playoff appearances, potentially 3. Oh, let's go ahead and add an additional 27 years as a head coach to Kelly's resume. Oh, and an average of 9 wins a year? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You think Lincoln was really choice number 1? You think you fell back to Brian Kelly? Get the hell out of here. Hell out of here. It's crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. And again, it makes so much sense now why, for all of even me, even I was starting to get upset about it. It makes so much sense now why, and I really came around to Napier, and I think Napier will do fantastic in Florida, and potentially still could do better than Kelly. We never know how these things are going to play out, but it does make sense now why all these other candidates were largely ignored.
Yeah,
because nobody has this resume,
and I'm excited for all of that. All of those things that you just said will come to light sooner rather than later, and I cannot wait for that because there was a lot of smoke over the weekend that is going to be laid to rest. By the way, it's officially official. Whenever you see the Lindsey Thompson graphic on the header there, it's official.
Wow. So that's Brian Kelly's actual Twitter right now. He has the header and the profile pic.
That's right.
Damn. All right, dude. Let's I know it was probably about 10 o'clock last night as the more excited I found myself becoming. I had to kind of be like, wait, is this real? I know Tham will tweet, are we sure this is real? And then I saw the Brian Kelly exit message to Notre Dame players, which not ideal. And we can talk about that. It's a nasty reality of the situation. But keep it locked. We got plenty more coming up here on Off the Bench, 104.5 ESPN.
So, all right. So one of the conversations about fit, how does Brian Kelly fit into the culture? And I understand that question. I mean, we brought that up in our group chat yesterday. Here's the thing. We've talked about, did Nick Saban and Coach Miles, did those guys necessarily have a fit? I mean, no, they weren't from Louisiana. And I understand Coach O was such a cultural fit because he was from Louisiana, but not every coach is going to be from Louisiana. It's about who you surround yourself around. Mm-hmm. Who's going to be on this staff? Who's going to be left over? Who's going to be brought in? You can still bring people in that have fits in the SEC. It doesn't have to be just Louisiana. So that is going to be fascinating. The coordinators on both sides. Obviously Marcus Freeman's somebody that probably gets an opportunity to interview for the Notre Dame job. If he doesn't get an opportunity at Notre Dame, if Luke Fickell goes to Notre Dame from Cincinnati, Marcus Freeman would have an opportunity probably to interview for Cincinnati. So that part of it is not going to be settled probably anytime soon. What will be settled is who stays from the current staff. We told you Corey Raymond, Kevin Falk, those are the names that we're hearing. Corey Raymond is one of the most important guys to keep around. Father DBU, what he's done on and off the field, what he means in recruiting, that part of it, that gets me excited because you just never know. You never know. Brian Kelly could have a guy that he's been with that's been with him for 15 years at DB, and you just never know. Yeah. So those early reports that Corey Raymond will stay on staff, that's very exciting.
I agree. Also, obviously, I say obviously, just because I think it makes a lot of sense. Austin Thomas staying on as general manager, but him and Woodward are AT and them.
He's done a hell of a job. Think about this recruiting class that has only lost 2 commitments it's held together when you've had a lame duck head coach for 5-6 weeks, and you've only lost 2. Now you lost 3 guys in the transfer portal, but as we've been saying, you lost 2 guys that didn't play and one that felt like he always had one foot in the transfer portal ever since he got to campus. Right, so you only lose a total of 5 players. I mean, Florida losing 5 in 10 minutes when Mullen was fired. I mean, look at Lincoln Riley.
Yes. The Oklahoma fallout is...
It's like Cyber Monday over there yesterday. I mean, they're just losing guys left and right. I mean, current roster, commits. So to only lose 5, big shout out to AT for being able to hold that together. And others, obviously.
Yeah, you're right, and there's actually a great article by Brody Miller in The Athletic exploring that from a couple of weeks ago, where it was like you're basically laying out how Austin Thomas was he had taken the lead in that regard, right? And it's interesting because generally how it works is that the personnel department finds guys, but then passes it off to the coaches to close and maintain the relationships, and that's going to eventually bring him in. This was the weird kind of opposite, where all of a sudden it was the personnel department's job to close and to maintain those relationships and say, don't worry, we got big news coming, and make no mistake, this is big news. And you know that meme, the worst person you know just made a great point?
Yeah.
So Dan Wetzel, now he followed this up with, I think, writing an article about how Brian Kelly's like a horrible human or something. So, you know.
He couldn't.
No surprise.
Yeah.
But he says but he is right about this. He says the talk of cultural fit for Brian Kelly and LSU is immaterial. You win and they love you. LSU just fired the greatest cultural fit of all time. This isn't about trading recipes. Saban and Meyer aren't from the South. So, I mean, there you go. It's true. You win and you're in. And the thing about Brian Kelly is he's won everywhere he's ever been. He spent 13 years at Grand Valley State, 4 years in assistant. Then he got the head job, went 1-18, 35-2 as the head man at Grand Valley State. He went to Central Michigan, took over a 4-7 team, finished 9-4 3 years later, goes to Cincinnati, 34-6 in 4 years in Cincinnati. Played in an Orange Bowl, played for a Sugar Bowl. He didn't actually coach Sugar Bowl because he'd already left at that point. Undefeated Cincinnati, ended up losing to Florida. But again, interesting here, Jake. 34-6 at Cincinnati, in a Sugar Bowl, undefeated, but he chose to leave. Why? He saw the ceiling.
Yeah.
Same thing. He saw the ceiling at Cincinnati. He knew he needed to take the next step, even though his team, everything was there. It was all comfortable. He was in the Sugar Bowl, undefeated, for God's sake. And he leaves, and he goes to Notre Dame. Takes over a 4-8 Notre Dame team, and then over the next, where's that one little nugget? I might have to recircle back around to that one later because his first 4 years are insane considering he took over 4-18. But overall, he goes 113-40 in South Bend. Passes up Newt Rockne as the winningest coach in Notre Dame history. 54-9 over the past 5 years. 2 bowl wins over LSU. Oh, here it is. He took over a 4-8 Notre Dame team. He went 43-8 over the next 4 years. Took over 4-8, went 43-8. Damn.
Say that again.
Took over a 4-8 team and then went 43-8. So literally over the next, it took him 4 years to match the loss total from the one season when he took over.
At a job.
I mean, what do you want?
At a job that is a pressure cooker. Think about it. Like, Notre Dame's a pressure cooker as far as the expectations and what you have to do, the people you have to keep happy. Without question, it is. Like, he had one bad year in 2016, and it was like, hey, bub, hey, that's it. What does he do the next year? Goes to Fiesta Bowl. Or the Citrus Bowl. It goes 10-3, beats LSU.
Yeah.
The next year goes to the Cotton Bowl, right? So he had that one season that he was 4-8, and then goes to a bowl game where he finishes top 10 in the country at number 10. Then the next year finishes 5th. The next year finishes 11th. The next year finishes 5th.
Yeah, I mean it's
so it's not only how can you handle success, which is a key piece of being the LSU head coach. It's how do you handle an off season, a season that you don't expect. Like LSU in 2020 went 5-5. How do you handle it? You went 6-6. Right? He goes 4-8, and then he rolls off 10, 12, 11, 10, 11.
Yeah.
Double-digit wins every year after the bad year.
It's wild, man. That is someone, and again, I love the fact, Jake, humble beginnings, Grand Valley State, D2 to start things out, right? Learning the process-oriented ways that have guided him throughout his entire career, learning that on a lower level of football, right? But just knowing that, to me, Jake, just speaks someone who knows how to coach ball, right? Or understands on the college level how to make a successful football program, because it's not just about the coaching on game day. It's not about being some sort of wunderkind. It's about managing everything that comes along with it. And I mean, again, you can keep trying to argue against it, but it's just like if we were in a court of law, you would be hard pressed to convince a jury of your peers because you just don't have a lot of solid ground to stand on. Like, you can try to pick and choose some things here or there, but like, again, I'm an optimistic person. I told you all that. I would talk myself into anybody. I just had no clue it would be this easy. But when you hire the, second, third active winningest coach in all of college football, yeah, makes it pretty easy. I love this line from Rabelais in today's article in The Advocate. Riley, talking about Lincoln Riley. Yeah, Riley is all modern and state-of-the-art, an electric-powered Tesla, sleek and stylish. Kelly is like a classic roadster. James Bond's Aston Martin DB5, albeit with a mane of gray hair. Ooh, absolutely love it. The color, and then he goes on to say the color of Bond's DB5 is called silver birch. I'll take it. I'll take the Aston Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I'll take that.
No, I won't. I'll take the Camry. Toyota, less ride.
Yeah, but
All-Star Toyota. I'll take the minivan, the Sienna.
Yeah, I take all this as well. But
is Bill O'Brien the Sienna? No, never. Nick Saban's a Sienna.
Bond's Aston Martin's got like guns and they can do like whirlybird things.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it doesn't feel like Brian Kelly, but that's the point. Okay, it doesn't matter how it feels, the guy wins. Closing out hour one next here on Off the Bench.